Hi, I'm Peggy Farren, and we are live with the Understand Photography Show, where we talk about travel, nature, and fine art photography. Welcome to episode 87. Today's guest is Joe Fitzpatrick, and Joe Fitzpatrick is here. He is one of us. He's Understand Photography. He's our lead instructor here. We're going to talk about HDR photography. Remember, our motto at Understand Photography is we simplify the technical. So if you're the type of person who likes things shown to you in a step-by-step manner with like, here, press this button, no, not that one, this one, turn that dial, step-by-step like that, you're gonna like our classes. We try to start everyone out with the 4 weeks to proficiency in photography. It's a 4-week class. The first class is shooting in manual. I don't know why people overcomplicate that, but we can teach you in a 2-hour class how to shoot in manual. Then you have to practice. So the other classes build on that beginning. You're going to learn composition, lighting, including flash photography. And then the last class is all the techie stuff like metering modes and drive modes and focus modes and things like that. So the next class, it's a live online class. So I'm there with you. I'm there. You can ask me, hey, I don't get it. What should I press? I'm not seeing it, whatever. I'm right there with you while you're taking the class. And you have the homework and everything. The next class starts June 5th. So go on understandphotography.com and you will find the class, the 4 weeks to proficiency in photography. And while you're there, check out our other classes. We've got quite a few good classes, including Joe Fitzpatrick has some really amazing Lightroom classes. Again, we simplify the technical. Little by little, we teach you step by step. So you're watching the Understand Photography Show, and we broadcast this live on Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on our Facebook page. Then we put it on YouTube, and we also put it as a podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. So please subscribe, review, comment, like, things like that. Today we're going to talk to Joe Fitzpatrick about HDR photography. Now, Joe is our technical guy here at Understand Photography. He knows everything, I swear. That's why he's the lead instructor. Anyway, welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Peggy.
Welcome
Glad
back.
to be here. Yeah.
Usually,
on to this side of the camera.
Yeah, you're here every week. What am I saying?
I got Heather filling in. Hey, Heather.
So, all right, so what is HDR?
Okay, HDR means high dynamic range, which of course leads into, well, what the heck is dynamic range, right?
Right.
So dynamic range is the difference between the darkest thing in a scene and the brightest thing in the scene. And our eyes and cameras, sensors, can only capture so much of a range between the lightest thing they can capture and the darkest. Typically, we measure that in stops. As photographers, we do everything in stops, right? So a typical sensor can see about 12 stops of dynamic range from the brightest thing to the darkest thing.
Okay.
Old film cameras could only see, slide film could see maybe on a good day 6 stops.
Okay,
and
so you couldn't bring those shadows out back in those days.
You just didn't have it, no.
Okay.
And film, negative film, if you really worked at it, you could get maybe 10 stops or 11 stops of range. But a scene, if it's very contrasty, of brilliant sunlight and shadows, it could have 15 stops, 16 stops, way more of dynamic range.
So for instance, a high dynamic range picture would be like, say you're taking a picture of the woods with a bright blue sky.
Exactly.
So the woods would be dark and the sky would be very bright.
Sunlight coming out, or you got a scene on a beach. And maybe you got a little, you've seen these shots in the Pacific where they have the water and you have some kind of rocks and then you have a cave in the rocks.
Right, so the cave would be real dark.
Real dark, and then the sky
and
everything else would be real bright. So you just can't do that.
So those pictures would be considered high dynamic range pictures.
Yeah. The range is too great for a sensor or whatever your recording device is, whether it's film or sensor, to capture the whole range from light to dark. So typically you got to say, well, I have to give something up. So typically you give up the shadows because you don't want to blow out a highlight and have it just pure white. So you expose for the highlight to get detail in the highlight, but then everything else is black. There's no detail in it, you know. So.
And then when digital photography came about, first of all, we have a bigger range for dynamic range.
Yeah.
But when somebody says HDR photography, that's not what they're talking about, right?
Well, HDR photography was a way to capture a high dynamic range and tricks to do that. And it goes way back to Ansel Adams and what was called the zone system. He had a thing called the zone system.
Okay.
And with his zone system, he could expand the range of what he would capture by exposing one way and then developing the opposite way so he could pull out the highlights and the shadows.
Okay.
It takes a lot of highly skilled darkroom work, and it takes a lot of highly skilled experience when you're looking at the scene, say, okay, this is absolute black, and then I'm going to assign this tone to this, and it got involved.
But we're not going to do that anymore.
It got involved.
So let's talk about with digital photography.
So with digital, basically, if you're taking a shot, and we have the histogram, you know, which to me is the greatest thing about a digital camera is I have the histogram.
Okay.
So I look at the histogram, and the histogram shows me percentage-wise what percentage of the image is whatever level of brightness. The histogram's divided into 255 ranges from black to white.
Okay.
And I can see how much of the picture is at each individual range, okay? So if it's climbing the left-hand wall, that's dead black. So if I have a lot climbing the left-hand wall, there's a lot in that image where I don't have any detail at all. It's just black.
All right.
Conversely, if a lot is climbing the right-hand wall, I have a lot of the image which is just pure white, no detail, and that can be a problem, especially here in Southwest Florida. We have all these wonderful white birds. You know, we have the snowy egrets and the great whites and everything else. And if you're blowing out the highlights, you have no details in the feathers. Or for someone that's in the wedding business, like your wedding business, well, you have a wedding dress and it's just a white blob with no detail. No, you're not getting anything like that.
So so you look at your histogram.
So you look at it and you see if it's climbing one wall or the other. If it's not climbing either wall, the dynamic range is within the capabilities of the sensor. So you're good to go. You don't need to do anything. If it's climbing one wall, but you have room on the other wall, you can change your exposure to try and shift that histogram over so the whole image.
Okay, to me you're just talking about regular exposure here.
Well, that's regular exposure.
Okay.
And then, but when it's climbing both walls,
okay,
now we're getting into, we have too much dynamic range to capture in one image.
Okay.
So at that point, we have to do something. We have to do something to get that exposure and range. And that typically is taking more than one shot.
All right.
Okay, we'll take a shot properly exposing for the shadows. We'll take another shot to capture all the highlights. Now there's one shot to keep it off the left-hand wall, another shot to keep it off the right-hand wall, and a third shot kind of in the middle.
All right.
And we could take more than that. I mean, to capture the whole scene, maybe we need 5 shots or 7 shots just to get everything in.
All right. How do you know how many shots?
Look at the histogram. Again, look at the histogram for each shot. Typically, I take 3 shots, 2 stops apart.
I never look at my histogram when I do HDR photography, but go ahead.
Well, you need to, because you're taking one shot and you're saying, okay, it's climbing both walls. I need to take more than one shot.
I never even thought of that. All I do is I look at a picture and I go, well, there's a lot of darks and lights in here. I know I'm going to have to do HDR.
Well, you know that from experience, and you're familiar with the camera.
I mean, anybody can see if something's got a lot of brights and darks, right?
Well,
no? You don't think so, huh?
I don't think so. I mean, because you can be fooled by that. So you have the histogram there, so you use it. It's a tool. So you look at it and you say, okay, I can capture the whole scene, or I can't capture the whole scene. If I can't capture the whole scene, then right away I find what works for me is usually taking 3 shots, spaced 2 stops apart.
Okay.
I rarely do 1 stop apart because I can pick up a stop. I shoot RAW. I can pick up a stop in processing with the RAW file. So,
well, what would be the benefit of doing 5 or 7 shots over doing 3 shots over 2?
Well, if I have a really, really wide dynamic range, some crazy level of difference, then 3 shots may push. The shots may need to be 3 stops apart or 4 stops apart to capture the whole thing.
No, but what I said was if you did 5 different exposures.
Well, that's when you need 5. If you did 5 different exposures.
Okay.
Well, there's 2 reasons for that. Older Nikon cameras would only do 1 stop apart. They wouldn't do 2 stops apart. The older Nikons, the newer
Okay.
ones will do 2. So in the old one, if you wanted to capture a 2-stop range on either side, you needed 5 shots to do that.
So
You need
what-
1 2 under, 1 1 under, 1 on, 1 1 over, and 1 2 over. You needed 5 shots with a Nikon camera up till a few years ago.
Well, some of the Nikon cameras have that option that you can take 5 shots.
Right. Well, that used to be you didn't have a 3-shot, 2 stops apart option.
Right.
You could
Okay.
only do 1 stop apart
Oh,
or
but
less.
you could do 5.
You could do 5
Oh, I
singles.
see.
So
Oh, I
you were
see.
to get a dynamic range of 2 under and 2 over, you had to take 5 shots.
I see.
And some people would say when you combine the 5 together, it gave you a cleaner look. But personally, shooting 1 2 under and 1 2 over looks the same to me as shooting 5 a stop apart. I couldn't see any difference.
tell the
Maybe
difference.
somebody can, but it wasn't
All right,
me.
so let's get to, when you're talking about bracketing, I know what you're talking about, but maybe our audience doesn't.
Okay,
So
well-
what does that mean?
So we want to take more than 1 shot,
Mm-hmm.
and we want to space the shots out so we capture the highlights and the shadows. So typically you're going to take 1 shot at whatever the proper exposure is to get the majority of the scene in.
So you're going to meter on 0
You're going to meter on 0.
on
and
the mid-tones.
on the midtones. You're going to take
Probably.
a shot for the midtones, so you're going to have 1 shot. And then you're going to take a shot for the highlights. So what you're going to do with that shot is whatever the meter is telling you, you're going to shift it so you're either exposure compensation, or if you're shooting manual, just instead of being on 0, be at -2. So that shot is 2 stops under. So hopefully that will capture all the highlights. And then we'll take a 3rd shot, and this one here will expose 2 stops brighter than what the suggested is, right? And that hopefully will capture all the shadows. And that's where I say hopefully, because after you take the 3, you're going to look at the one that's under and make sure you're not still climbing that wall a little bit. If you are, then you need another shot on that side.
Even darker.
Even darker, even darker or brighter depending on which side
Which
we're
side,
looking at.
okay.
So you're going to look at the 3 and you're going to look at where the histograms are and make sure that on the one you're not climbing the left-hand wall and on the other one you're not climbing the right.
All right, so let's just remember, we're trying to simplify this,
Okay.
and this is getting
Okay.
really,
All right.
it's
Too
getting
mu-
hard for me to follow.
Okay. All right.
And I know how to do
all right,
it.
let's back up then.
So
taking-
we're gonna take 1 shot that's
In the
metered
middle.
on 0,
Right.
and then we're gonna take another shot -2, and then another shot -2. I mean positive 2.
2.
So 1 shot on meter on 0, 1 shot -2, 1 shot +2.
Right.
Okay. How am I going to do that? Am I changing my ISO, my aperture, or my shutter speed, or what?
Well, the best way to do it is to change your shutter speed.
Okay.
The reason being, if you change your aperture, then your depth of field is going to be different for all 3 shots. So when you combine them together, you're trying to combine an image that doesn't have the same sharpness level throughout.
Okay.
So you don't want to do that.
So
If you
obviously we
use-
want to be on a tripod
Yes.
with a shutter release
mean-
cable.
you can with some of the modern software, you can get away sometimes hand holding an HDR shot. The catch is that the shutter speed has to be high enough on all 3 shots that you can bang them out. If the shutter speed can be up a 60th of a second or better on even the slowest shot, and you're fairly steady, you can hand hold for 3, because when we talk about software later, some of the software can do a good job of combining them together.
Okay.
So yeah, we want to be on a tripod for this most of the time.
All right. So
So-
we are going to change our shutter speed.
We're going to change our shutter speed. The reason we don't want to do ISO is essentially for the same kind of reasons we did with the not using aperture. If you use a different ISO, you have a different noise level. So now you're dealing with 3 different noise levels. Again, you can wind up with a less than satisfactory image. So typically you're going to alter your shutter speed.
Okay.
Now, the way you do that is you could just do that manually and take 3 shots and tell it 1 less, 1 on, and 1 over setting it on manual and setting your needle instead of being on 0, put it on -2 and then +2. Or you could, dial in exposure compensation for each thing. But all modern cameras that I've seen, DSLRs and a lot of your bridge cameras, have a bracketing function. where you can tell it, okay, I want a bracket, and then you tell it how many shots and how many stops apart you want them to be.
Okay, so walk me through that on a Canon first, because Canons are all the same, right? Pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right, so walk us through that.
You're going to go into your menu and you're going to find where bracketing is.
So menu and then bracketing.
Yeah,
I think it's called exposure bracketing on
it's
a Canon.
called exposure bracketing, and I'm trying to think which tab it'd be under. On
It's
mine,
on one of the wrenches, I know.
on mine, it's on my custom settings tab. You know,
Oh.
you know where you set it when you get the camera, you look and you find out where it is, and then you
Yeah.
put that on your favorite tab, and then you don't have to look for it again. You know, and I have a lot of stuff like that, which is fine for me. But when I go to teach somebody and it's something common, I'm trying to remember where the heck in the menus it is. You know, and they're looking at me. Don't you know? You know, well, no, because I only did it. It's like asking for a telephone number. You know, I don't know. It's in there. You know. But so you'll go in there.
So you're going to go menu,
and then you're going to go menu, and then you're going to go whether it's on the shooting menu or the custom menu. You're going to find exposure bracketing.
Exposure bracketing.
And then when you get to exposure bracketing, you have two choices: whether it's flash or whether it's just regular bracketing.
Yeah, I think it's called exposure bracketing. I don't think it's called
okay.
flash bracketing. It's not what you want.
Yeah. So we want exposure bracketing. You go in there, and you can tell it how many shots you want and how far apart you want the shots.
You can tell how many shots? I don't think
well,
on Canon.
Depends on the camera.
Okay, on Canons, I know you can say how many. You can, like, they have a little slider. I think it's on your front wheel. I'm not sure. It could be your back wheel. And it will like slide it one stop over and under, or two stops over and under, or three stops over and under.
But on the more advanced cameras, when they get more advanced, you can also set it for 3, 5, or 7.
Oh.
Okay. When you get up there, some of the newer ones, the 5D Mark IVs.
Mine don't do that. None of mine do that.
You know, some of them do that. Like the 6Ds and that don't know, but the more advanced ones, you can have a choice of how many shots as well.
Okay, so
you have that.
So then okay, so let's just slowly walk people through this.
So
okay, so we go into the this is on a Canon camera.
Right.
Menu, exposure bracketing, then you change it to 2 stops over and 2 stops under.
Right.
And then I think you hit set or something
when you turn that wheel, you'll actually see there's 2 indicators, and you'll see them spread out from the center to the number of stops you want, because you can do it in third of a stop increments. So you dial it until you see them spread out to 2.
Okay. And
then you'd have a 3-stop.
But then you really, you have to, I can't remember if it's a set button, because this is a problem with teaching. Is a set button on a Nikon or Canon?
it's a set button.
So you hit the button, because if you don't hit that, it doesn't stay.
Yeah.
I know that for sure, because I was just teaching HDR to somebody this past weekend, and it's like she couldn't get it to stay, and that's what she was skipping that step.
Then you have it set up for that. And when that's set up for that, it's set up for that until you go back in the menu and change it. It doesn't just do it for one shot. It's set up.
And that's exactly why I don't like it, because one of the ladies, somebody else was teaching her HDR before she came on our ladies' weekend, and she said, well, I have to put my hand in between each shot to know that this is the next series of shots. I said, well, you're going to have to take 3 pictures of your hand then, because you have to take 3 pictures every time if you've got that bracketing set up.
Right.
Which is why I do it manually. I do just like you said. I just change I meter on 0 for the first one. I meter on -2 on the second. I meter on +2 on the third, changing my shutter speed manually. Just because to me, it's easier to do.
When you have the bracketing set up though, and you have the camera on your shutter on multiple shot, okay, you can just, when you get to it and you set up the bracket, you just squeeze the shutter and boom, it does the 3 shots. You go in, well, I'm talking about your shutter, you have single shot, or you can turn it and you have multiple shot, high speed, low speed, whatever your camera has. Same control where typically you have your self-timer and everything else on your shutter mode.
Okay, but go ahead, it's not just automatically going to happen.
Well, if you put it on high speed or multiple, and you have your bracketing set.
Multiple is not, on a Canon it's called continuous drive mode.
Continuous drive. So if you put it on continuous drive, and you have it set up for a 3-shot bracket, you press the shutter button down. It will take 3 shots and stop.
I don't think so.
Yeah. I do it all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't, are you in you in an automatic mode of some sort?
No, I'm in manual.
Huh.
I do it in manual, I use manual and I use aperture priority.
Okay.
And it'll take 3 shots, even using a remote. It'll take 3 shots and stop.
Okay.
So boom, you have the 3-shot exposure. And that's why you can get away hand holding, because you're not changing anything. And it takes the shots and
it's
stops.
changing it three shots just
3
like
shots,
that.
boom, boom, boom. However long it takes the shutter speed to be. Yeah.
Okay.
So
all right. So on a Canon, you go in the menu.
Right.
Exposure bracketing. You change that to 2 steps under, 2 steps over. You change your drive mode to continuous.
Yeah.
And then if you're in manual, you meter to 0 and then take the 3 shots. If you're in shutter, well, you would be an aperture priority.
And
so
a lot of times I will be for that.
So you would be in aperture priority or manual. Those are really your only 2 choices.
And a lot of times I'll use aperture priority
okay.
for that as opposed to manual.
All right.
Why?
So
because I can't,
What about on a Nikon? Now, Nikons are all different.
Nikons are all different. Most of the newer Nikons have a bracketing button, which typically is on the side of the camera around where you have the button to turn the flash off and on, or set the flash.
It's in the front of
on
the
the
camera,
side,
right? Front
around the lens mount.
With your left hand, if you could reach around.
It's on the left-hand side, above the lens mount, the lens release.
Some of them are down on the
bottom. Some of them, they're all over.
Yeah, they're all over the place.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of them they have it there. But you look around, you'll find a button marked bracket,
and you press it in. Because I didn't understand that at first, because I was trying to change that dial, and I'm like, how do you get this bracket thing to work?
when you press that bracket in, then on the top deck of the camera, the one wheel is going to control the number of shots, and the other wheel is going to determine the spacing between them. Now they do it odd, because you can tell it to do a bracket of 3 starting at 0 and going like 2 negative and 4 negative. In other words, you can tell it to either do it around the exposure point, or all one side, or all the other, which is different than the way a Canon would do it.
Isn't there an option in there, though, to go one above?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
one
Well, you have
okay.
3 options. You have an option to go all negative, or all positive, or half and half, and you can tell it how many stops apart that would be.
Okay.
Okay, and that's going to vary depending on the age of the Nikon cameras, exactly what you have. The newer ones you can do 3, 5, 7.
So you have to be holding that bracket button down.
You have to hold that button down the entire time you set the other 2.
Now, once it's set, is it set like a Canon?
It's set like a Canon.
So it's going to take 3 shots no matter, or however many?
It's going to take however many until you physically go in and put everything back to 0.
Okay.
And that holds up even if you shut the camera off and put it back on later, take the batteries out of it, it's going to come back on with that.
Now, what about taking 3 shots in a row on that? Do you put it in continuous drive mode again?
I haven't tried doing it without being on continuous. So I'm not sure if you have to do that, or whether you'd have to press it 3 times.
I can't remember either.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that, but somebody with a Nikon, the easiest thing, put it on bracket and press it. And if you have to take 3, to me, you put it on continuous and you know it's going to do it, and it's nice and simple, and it does stop when it's done. It doesn't just keep shooting 3 and 3 and 3. It does the 3, 5, 7, whatever you set it for, and then it stops even though it's on continuous. They're smart enough to know that. So it's handy for that, yeah.
All right. So what happens then? So you've got these 3 shots, and what do they look like? Okay,
well, I got 3 shots, and I'm going to look at them on the back of the camera. And one of them is going to be really dark, and one of them is going to be average, and one of them is going to be really bright. What I'm looking for is on the really dark one, do I have all the detail in the bright places? Okay, so I'm looking at the really dark one, the one that's underexposed. And I'm looking, do I have detail?
Like the sky.
Do I have detail in the sky, or do I still have a blown out area? And really, I'm going to look at the histogram. And if the histogram's not climbing the right-hand wall, then great, I got all the detail.
Okay.
And then I'm going to look at the overexposed one Now I'm going to look at the shadows. Do I have all the detail I want in the shadows? In other words, is it off the left-hand wall? And if I do, then great, I'm good to go. If I don't, I'm going to have to go back in and maybe take one more picture to compensate. And for that, I usually just do it manually.
All right.
What you could do is you could compensate and do another 3 or 5, but rarely does that happen. 99% of the time, 1 2 under or 1 2 over is going to cover it. You're not going to have to worry about it. But if it doesn't, then you're going to have to take an additional shot or something to capture that part you're still missing.
So your advice is to look at that histogram before you move the camera. Keep that
Exactly.
keep that tripod exactly where it is.
And then you can take one more or whatever you want to do to capture that range. Truthfully, Peggy, I could probably count on 2 hands maybe the number of times I've had that issue, you know, over the course of several years of doing a lot of HDR work. I don't encounter that drastic of a thing.
2 steps is almost
usually
always the right.
When you're shooting RAW, because you have leeway there with the RAW file too, so you're covered a pretty wide range there, you know.
Oh no, let me ask you the difference between RAW and JPEG then. So what if I shot this in JPEG? What would be the difference?
Well, you don't have quite the dynamic range in the JPEG, because the JPEG is compressing and it's throwing stuff away, so you don't have quite that range. So you may be restricted there. You might have to take more images.
Okay.
I mean, but really, if you're shooting HDR, you really should be shooting RAW, because you have a difficult lighting situation. So the last thing you want to do in a difficult lighting situation is to throw away detail.
Yeah.
You know, you're trying to get as much detail as you want. You go to JPEG, you're throwing it away. So it's not the time to be shooting a JPEG.
So who would use HDR photography? Well, we know real estate agents now,
Well,
or not agents, photographers.
Real estate, well, a lot of the agents are the photographers there. Real estate agents use it a lot because they have tricky lighting conditions. You have outside light streaming in the windows. You have bright areas in the house with the room lighting and dark areas, and they're trying to pull the detail out of all this. So they'll take multiple shots to try and combine it into an HDR image. You know, back in the day, they'd come in and they'd have all kinds of lights, and they'd be lighting.
When I learned it was all with a million lights.
Yeah,
you had so many lights.
You'd have a million lights.
You'd have to light up the corners. You had to learn about light painting to do the shadows.
And then you had to gel the windows to get the white balance the same and everything.
Now.
And now they take, you know, 3 shots or whatever it is, and they can combine it together, and they can play with the white balance a little bit and come out with a shot without doing all this. It doesn't take the skill anymore that it took. Now, is it as good as doing it the other way? No, not really. But it's close enough for, you know, like they say, close enough for government work kind of thing, is the saying. I mean, that's really what it amounts to, is it's satisfactory for the purpose they want to do it, you know.
Now, what about a lot of cameras have an automatic HDR feature, including my iPhone.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think about that? What's your opinion?
Well, they're nice. They do the job. Some of them aren't really HDR. They're playing around. They're taking one image and playing around with the software to try and push the shadows or tone down the highlights. Some of them, the DSLRs that do that, typically do take a 3-shot bracket or more and combine them together in the camera to come out with something. And they work very well. But you don't have any control over it.
We like control.
We like control. It's combining 3 shots together, and if you like the way it did the combination, great. But if you thought it did a little too much on the highlights or too much on the shadows or whatever, too bad.
Now, I don't have a camera that does HDR automatically. What is that, a menu setting, or?
Yeah.
Is that what you do?
Yeah.
So you would go into your menu and...
Yeah, and typically a lot of them are doing it with JPEGs. Not all of them, but a lot of them are doing it with JPEGs. Some do it with the RAW file. Some of the bridge cameras that do that after they're done combining, that's the only shot you have is the combined shot. With the DSLRs, typically you have the HDR combined shot, plus you have your originals to play with. But each camera's different, and you got to really look at what you have, you know.
So if that was like, say I was a real estate photographer as a full-time job, would it be a wise decision to get a camera like that? Or what if I'm just like a realtor who's not really a photographer? Do you think buying a camera like that so you don't have all the processing?
Well, it depends on how much time you want it. Obviously, you do that and you got a picture out of the back and it's suitable. It's not tricky, but it's suitable for a lot of occasions,
So only if I'm selling cheap houses is what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but a lot of the other ways you have to combine it are fairly quick to do. Okay. If you're a realtor and you're doing a house and you're doing, I don't know, what, 10 rooms maybe or something like that, how many photos do you have that you're dealing with? And you can batch process them with a lot of this software too.
Okay.
It's different if you were running off 20 houses a day and you had to do it as a production, then you might think about it, like the real estate photographers that are doing multiple things, and time is money and they're trying to keep the costs down because of what they're charging. They may want to use something quick like that. It depends on what they are, and it depends on where they are in the economic scale.
And how do you think that they're just not as good yet? Though?
No,
they're not there yet.
They're not there yet compared to what you can do using other techniques.
Well, all right. So I've shot the picture. Let's say I've shot 10 pictures, all bracketed. Now what do? I've shot in RAW. I did everything you said. I've got these 3 exposures. What's my next step?
Go back to your house, load them into the computer, and now we have a number of ways that we can combine them together.
Okay.
Starting with the hardest, I guess, you can combine the 3 into a program that does layers like Photoshop and put them each on a different layer, and then use mask or luminosity mask to cut out the parts you want to combine them together.
Okay.
So
All right, let's skip the hard stuff.
That's work.
Okay.
Which is why they came out with HDR software.
All right.
HDR software automates the process of combining the 3 images together into a single image. The most popular and probably, if not the first successful commercial one that I know of was Photomatix.
Yeah, I never heard of anything except Photomatix.
And there was some shareware kind of, open source stuff around, but Photomatix was the one that came out that really worked.
Yeah.
And did it, and it also made a horrible name for HDR, because a lot of the defaults back then gave you this over-processed, weird-looking, cartoony look that people came to associate with HDR.
Yeah.
This cartoon kind of thing. But some people like that as a look. Some people still do. But what it was doing, it was combining the 3 images together in the software. But what people weren't looking at is you had all these sliders that you could make it look like a realistic image.
Right. And I think it's more sophisticated now, because I have the $39 version of Photomatix, and I actually have the $39 and the $99 version. And if you just do the default now, it looks like a real picture.
Yeah,
it doesn't, but it did used to look kind of cartoony.
It looked very cartoony.
And so you had to pull it into Photoshop and fix it.
Yeah, you're looking at, that was Photomatix 1. Now they're on Photomatix 6.
Yeah. So and by the way, if anybody's interested, we are a affiliate for Photomatix. If you go on understandphotography.com, you can get a link and check it out. I think there might be a discount, but now I can't remember. It's been so long.
I'm not sure. I think
anyway, but go ahead.
But Photomatix Pro.
So what do they do? How do you do it?
You take the 3 images and you put it in there, and the software goes to work on it.
So you open up the thing and it says right on there, put your 3 images in here or something like that.
Yeah, and there's 2 ways you can do it. You can open up the Photomatix Pro software, or any of this. This would apply to any of the ones we're going to talk about.
And this is a standalone program.
Well, it's a standalone program, plus it's a plug-in for Photoshop or Lightroom.
Okay.
So you can use it as a standalone, or if you own Lightroom, any version, or Photoshop, any version, you can use it as a plug-in, so you can do it right from within those programs. When I'm doing it, I'm a Lightroom user, as you know, and I'll do it right from within Lightroom and with the plugin, which is simpler, but it's still the same program once you get it in there. So you're taking your 3 images, and they can be, with the standalone program, they can be RAW files too. It will process a RAW file. So you take your 3 images, or however many you have, and you tell Photomatix, and this applies to, the images itself applies to any one we'll talk about. You take the images, you put it in the program. The first thing the program does is it goes in there and it analyzes the 3 and figures out what's the dark, what's the light, and this and that, and then it combines the 3 together, okay, into a very high resolution 32 or 64-bit image that is really weird looking if you look at it. And then from there you tell it how you want it to process it. And typically, like with Photomatix, you have a whole list of presets that show you what it will look like if you process it with each of these presets. And the looks go from very realistic to very bizarro. Yeah, bizarro, and in between there's even some monochrome looks. So you would pick the look that's closest to what you have in mind, and you tell it that, and okay, and it churns for a second, and it comes up with the image. And then you have a whole bunch of sliders where you can further process it and adjust the tones and adjust the amount of HDR and adjust the shadows and the highlights. And with the latest versions now, they do kind of like layers, and you can go in and mask and just apply to different parts, and instead of just doing
Photomatix
Pro, yeah. Photomatix has kind of a thing. I hesitate to call it a layer, but you have localized adjustments. Another program we'll talk about in a minute actually has layers in it.
Okay.
Okay, so you can go in there and with the latest version, which is 6, you can go in there and you can, instead of apply global tonality adjustments, you can pinpoint where you want them to be.
That's cool.
Yeah, and then once you're done, you tell it, okay, make me an image, and it's going to crank out typically a TIFF or a JPEG if you want.
Huge file.
Yeah, big file. It's going to be a big file.
And it takes a while.
And it takes a while, depending on the speed of your computer. And you'll come up with this image that's going to capture all the shadows and all the highlights and give you all the detail you want. Look really good, depending on which of the presets, from bizarro to really realistic, you want. The last version of Photomatix, they actually had 3 presets called real estate.
Oh.
Now they've changed it to something else. They're not calling it real estate anymore. They're calling it something else, but it's the same essentially. They're geared for that look where you have a real bright window and dark pockets inside, and it's made to make it look realistic. Okay. So, but they have a lot of different presets, and you can get pretty close to what you want.
Yeah.
It has different ways it approaches it, the way it blends them together, which is a little too technical again to how it works. But basically, pick a preset that looks close and then play with it from there.
I mean,
it's a lot of fun.
You know, we always do that in our ladies' weekends, and
yeah.
the women, if they've never done it, they get really excited because you can do some really cool things.
And the trick is, do it and then back it off some. You know, because when we get in there, we all have a tendency to overdo it. You know,
all right, so the Photomatix, they have a Photomatix Light or something. I forget
yeah,
what it's called.
They have a Light.
It's $39,
Yeah.
and then the Pro is $99.
Pro is $99, and it's Pro 6 these days. That's the latest one, and that's really nice.
And again, you can just link right from understandphotography.com. What about all the other ones?
Okay, the other one, the one that's getting a lot of press these days, is Aurora HDR 2018.
Okay.
And that has, the interface on Photomatix is a little bit clunky. It's got separate windows for this, that, and the other, and what have you. The interface in Aurora is a cleaner, more modern look with the sliders built in on both sides, kind of like a Lightroom kind of look to it.
Okay.
Okay, that kind of, everything's built in as opposed to having floating windows and things like that.
Okay.
It does layers, so you can layer up different things to the layers allow you to apply the effect much more targeted as to how much effect you want to apply different one. Again, it has a lot of presets. It looks very good. I have played with it some. The end result, when I've used it, and admittedly I haven't used it that much, but the end result, I get pretty much the same thing as I get with Photomatix.
Okay.
And I'm a lot more comfortable, obviously, with Photomatix, having gone back
Many
versions
years.
after version, you know. But it's certainly the equal, if not the better, of,
Do you know the cost?
Photomatix. That again is $99.
Okay, so same
that's
cost.
It's the same cost. And the thing with these things is they all have free trials,
Okay.
but they're limited. Usually they're not 30 days. I think they're 14 days. I know Aurora's is 14.
Photomatix, I think it's unlimited, but they
it
have
has the
Photomatix
thing,
all over
yeah,
it. You
yeah.
can't actually use the pictures.
Aurora's is like a 14-day. So with any of these things, if you want to evaluate it, make sure you, before you open it, make sure you have the time to do it, because once the clock runs out, you're not going to be able to do it again.
Yeah.
So you want to say, okay, I'm going to have the time this week to do it.
Okay.
And you can play with it that. But Aurora is a nice program. A lot of people are liking that. Again, that's a standalone program or a Lightroom and Photoshop plugin.
Okay.
That can be used either way, both ways. The other one that's very popular is Easy HDR 3.
Okay.
Okay? It's a much simpler program than the other two, and I've only experimented with it a little bit, you know, taking the same images and putting it in that. It doesn't have as many controls or presets or anything else. Again, though, it does have the Lightroom and Photoshop plugin. Its big claim to fame is it's $39 instead of $99. So
is the Photomatix Light or whatever it's
yeah,
called.
I haven't looked at Light in a long time.
See, that's what I always tell everybody to get.
As I remember, Light didn't show you what the presets look like.
Yeah, they do now.
Okay, but I mean, I'm going back probably version 3 or 4.
I'm more familiar with that because
Okay.
I always have the ladies for our ladies
Yeah.
weekend download the free trial
Okay.
before the ladies weekend, and there's just nothing to it. It's
Oh.
so easy to use. You just you look at the presets, you choose one, and you're kind of done. Where you can still tweak it with the sliders, but it's like I was going to try to write up instructions, and I couldn't
Okay.
write up instructions because it's too easy to
Isn't
use.
it the same program when you're in the trial mode?
No.
Okay.
No, they're different programs.
They
the
are?
Pro
Okay.
is definitely more complicated.
Okay.
It's not complicated, but it's more complicated.
Okay, has more stuff.
I'm not kidding you. When I tried to write instructions, I couldn't because it was just too easy.
Okay.
It's like you put them, it says, put your pictures in here.
Yeah,
And how do you find the pictures? Browse.
yeah.
You put them in, it says, okay, now push go or something. I mean,
yeah.
I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not really. It's
Well,
so
with all these, you can drag them.
easy.
You can drag and drop your images in too with all these programs
Right, yeah.
I've talked about. So Easy HDR is somewhat simpler. It's less ability to mess around with, but it's $39 instead of $99. Now I don't know where Photomatix Light, if that's what they're calling it, is today.
I can't remember if that's the name of it either.
The one thing, let me back up for a minute though, because there was one thing I forgot to mention with these 3 programs. There's what they call ghosting. Ghosting is you're taking 3 images. Now if you're taking a picture of a statue and you're not in San Francisco during an earthquake, they're all going to be exactly the same. There's no movement, right?
Okay.
But if you have movement between the 3 shots, when it combines them together, the subject is in 3 different places, so you get what they call ghost. Okay. Or if there was a lot of movement, you might not even have a whole person, right? Now, the ability to what they call de-ghost, to eliminate the other ghost. Photomatix Pro by far is the best at doing that.
Oh,
Hands down. There is no, to my mind, there is no comparison. That's still head and shoulders above the others.
Okay.
So that's something to consider. I haven't tried that at all in Easy HDR, so I don't know how good that is, but I suspect not a whole lot because I didn't see where.
Now, is the ghosting the glow that you see sometimes on?
Sometimes you'll get
What is that glow that HDR gives?
Well,
like you see, like a lot of people do it at the Naples Pier.
okay.
And you see this like white or this kind of grayish, whitish
Around
glow
all the
around
edges?
the pier. Yeah, around
The edges. That's caused by overprocessing. In other words, and you can get that even if it's not in HDR, if you have another program that you put it in like Topaz Adjust or something like that, and you crank it up, and you get those halos around everything.
Halos, that was the word.
Yeah, you get the halos.
I couldn't think of the word.
That's because the processing is gone to extremes, and it causes that.
Because I see
And
a
the other
lot
wa-
of HDR stuff
that just means you needed to back off that contrast and what have you to get rid of that
Okay.
halo around there.
So that's not
Yeah.
ghosting.
No, and you can get that in a single image. You can get the halos if you push it up.
Okay, so the
So
ghosting, is when
where
there's
you
slight
have
movement.
You get slight movement, or even if you got a person walking across, you wind up with 3 shadow images of the person, and you're trying to get rid of
will
that.
it get rid of the ghost completely?
It does. It's the best around. It depends on what's going on there as to how successful it does, but it does a really good job of it. I mean,
Okay.
I'm always amazed at how well it does it.
All right, what about just Photoshop using
Okay.
Photoshop Photo Merge HDR Pro, I think it's called.
you can use the next step, like I talked about those 3. Now there is one fourth one I didn't mention yet,
Okay.
and that is free for a limited time only, I guess
Okay.
I'll say. And that's in the Nik plugin package. One of the Nik plugins is HDR Effects Pro.
Okay.
Now we've talked about Nik plugins on this show. People have talked about this a number of times.
We'll bring it up again, because
And
maybe
what
they
it
didn't
is
hear that
is
show.
Nik got sold out to Google, and Google really didn't buy Nik for the Nik plugin. They bought it for what they call their control point technology, because they wanted to use that in some of their other cell phone apps.
Snapseed, right?
Yeah, Snapseed, exactly, is what they put that technology in there. And then they recently sold the software rights to DxO Labs. So DxO Labs, and when Google had it, the program went from being $300 to being $150 to being here
Free.
you go, because we're not going to support it anymore. So if it works with it's a plug-in, so you'd have to use it with Lightroom or Photoshop Elements. Here you go. If it works, fine. If it doesn't, don't call us. We don't care. So, and people were using it because it was free and it was great.
really, really good.
It was
and
it is really, really
good
good.
stuff.
Okay, so you have that, and now DxO Labs bought it, and they are going to combine it with their software that they're making. But in the meantime, the last time I looked, you could still download it for free from them. Okay, so I don't know how much longer that will go on.
How do you find it?
If you Google Nik
It'll come up.
plugins, it should come on, or go on the
Because
DxO.
it used to be nick.google.com
Yeah.
or something
Well,
like
now
that,
you
and
have
it's
to get-
NIK.
Yeah, NIK. Now you have to go to the DxO Labs, or is it Labs or software? You have to go to the DxO site. And DxO has got 2 sites. They got one for their testing stuff, and they got one for their software stuff.
Excuse me.
And you go on there and look around and see if you can find it. I don't know how much longer that'll be on there. In point of fact, I don't know much how longer DxO will be there, because they declared bankruptcy. So they're
I didn't know that.
they're quote reorganizing. And
Oh,
depending
so-
on what they say, they're going to be back in business in 2 weeks, or who knows? Yeah, you don't
my
know.
goodness.
It's a French bankruptcy because they're a French company. So
So the HDR Effects Pro, do you like that?
yeah, it goes back. It's about the equal of Photomatix 3 or 4, because that's about where the technology on it stopped.
Oh, that's when they quit updating
That's
it.
when they quit updating it.
Okay.
So it's a good program. It's a very good program for free.
Yeah.
Okay, I wouldn't pay $99 for it or whatever they were charging for it back then. Back then it was the competition to Photomatix, and it was pretty much up there. But now it's free. It is a plug-in only. It's not standalone, right? So you're going to have Photoshop to run it.
Or will it plug into Elements?
Older versions it will.
Ah.
It won't plug into the current version, and limited success with the version before that, which was what, 14 or 15?
15 or
Whatever,
yeah,
14 or
whatever.
15. But older versions than that, yeah, it'll work with. But then it
Okay.
stopped kind of working with the last couple elements. But again, it's free, and give it a shot if that does what you need it
But
to do.
also free. There's
is-
HDR built right
now
into
we have-
Photoshop
now-
or
now we
Elements
have
or Lightroom.
We have one built in to both Lightroom and Photoshop.
And Elements.
And Elements, yeah. I haven't, truthfully, I haven't tried the one in Elements 2018. But it's built in there. Now, between the one in Photoshop and the one in Lightroom, I like the way the one in Lightroom works better.
Okay.
Okay. It seems to just give me a little better result. The one in Lightroom.
Yeah, but you're biased. You
but
like
then I'm
Lightroom
biased.
for everything.
Well,
I'm just teasing you.
The nice thing about the one in Lightroom, if you put raw files into it, you get a raw file out. You don't get a TIFF out. You get a raw file, specifically a DNG. But you put it in there and you tell it, merged HDR is the term they use. And it merges the three photos into a really good HDR. And then you just take that and then you process that in Lightroom like you would any other file.
All right, I'm going to back that up because I use that a lot. Okay. Because the reason I use HDR photography is just I'm doing a job. Let's say I'm doing a wedding, and I want to get a quick shot, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to expose this.
Yeah,
so I often hand
Mm-hmm.
hold and I just change the
Boom, boom.
exposure and boom, boom, boom. I'll take two. Sometimes I only take two.
Now you're going to bracket and get the three. No.
No, I'm not going to the menu and all that stuff. That's way too much work. But I mean, sometimes I just take two.
Yeah.
I take one of the exposure of the sky. I meter on the sky. I meter on the the ground or the dark part.
Yeah. Yeah.
And honest to God, that software is so sophisticated. I'm hand holding and I'm moving my camera because first I'm metering on the sky and then I put it about in the middle, take the picture. Then I meter on the ground and I put it in the middle and take the picture. So I'm not even on a tripod. And that software lines it up.
Yeah,
but what I like about Lightroom is as I'm processing the pictures, I am on that little strip. I'm in the develop mode, but I'm on that little strip on the bottom and I just highlight 1, 2, 3, the three pictures. You right click and then it comes up as an option, right? What's the option? Do you remember what it's called?
It's
Merge to HDR or something?
It's HDR Pro. It's got a Pro in there.
I think it says Merge to HDR Pro or something like that.
Yeah.
So you right click on the, highlight the three pictures, right click, it says merge it, and then you click, you click enter and it's done.
Yeah, it lines it up and brings it right in.
And it looks really good.
Yeah.
It looks like a real picture. It doesn't look cartoony.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really happy with it. I use it in Photoshop as well, but the Lightroom is just easier because I'm doing my rough processing in Lightroom anyway. So, but I use the Photoshop a lot too.
Yeah, I like the Lightroom one. It's nice. I'm either using the one in Lightroom, or if it's something where I'm not getting the results I want in Lightroom, or I want to get a different look, then I'll go to Photomatix, because in Photomatix I have a much more range of tools to play with to get any kind of certain look I might want.
Yeah, see, you're doing it for artistic purposes.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get a nice looking picture.
Yeah.
I don't want it to look, I want it to look like I just exposed it that way.
Right. So the one in Lightroom works really well for that.
So how does it work in Photoshop?
Pretty much the same thing.
Do you remember how to do it?
You select your three images. You bring the images in. When you go to File, and then you go down, and there's I'm trying to remember. You go to File.
I think it's Automate. File,
Automate.
Yeah,
Automate, and then
it says Merge to HDR Pro, because I think it's the same program.
Yeah, and then it brings it in. I don't know. It just kind of doesn't.
There's more steps to it in Photoshop than there is in Lightroom, because in Photoshop you don't actually have to bring the pictures in, but for me I always do. I bring them in first to Photoshop, and then I'll just have those three pictures in Photoshop. I go to File, Automate.
Yeah,
I think it says Merge to HDR Pro.
Yeah.
And then it brings up another window.
Yeah.
And it says, oh no, they do that in Lightroom too, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that window
Yeah,
comes
you
up
get
in
the
Lightroom
window
too.
if you want to align the images.
One of the things I learned is no, that's for something else. And then it says add open files or something, because you can add files from something, but add open files, add the open files, and then click OK or something like that. That comes up in Lightroom too, doesn't it? Yeah. But it's so easy.
Yeah, it's simple. When you have the controls right there to do what you want.
But the Lightroom is the easiest.
The Lightroom's the easiest.
Because you're right there, and you don't, it's just so fast. You don't have to take any extra steps.
And you got,
like you said, if you want something artistic, you might want to go into Photomatix.
Yeah, you have a...
Or try one of these other.
Or try one of these other, yeah. I mean, there's all these other programs, the three I mentioned, all have free trials. And the thing to do is go in there and try the free trials and play around with them and see which one works for you the best. You know?
Now, I I'm not, I should have looked this up before I started the show, but didn't we write up instructions on HDR stuff in our blog somewhere?
Yeah, we have, I think we have one on shooting or bracketing. I think we have one on bracketing.
We'll have to find
Yeah.
that and put it in the show notes. And
Yeah,
if we don't
yeah.
have it,
You're going to write it up.
Oh, look! Did you notice I said we and you said you?
Well, I know what.
We,
I know what.
meant you.
Yeah, that's why I said you, because I know what we meant. Heather?
Heather, yeah.
No, she's shaking her head. No. Okay. All right.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, all right. So, what else? What other last tips do you have?
Okay. I guess.
Or what are things? What about? We got about 2 minutes left.
Oh, okay.
What are some mistakes people make when they're doing HDR
Well,
photography?
the biggest mistake people make, and it's the mistake we all made when we first started using HDR, is we overprocessed. And we wound up with cartoons, even though we didn't think they were cartoons. But you look back on that stuff from a few years ago, and you go, oh my God. Even like the most famous HDR photographer, I guess, is Trey Ratcliffe. And he does amazing stuff. Oh, he's part of the team that developed Aurora, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And he does amazing stuff. But if you look at some of his early work, boy, it was out there, you know, like everybody else's, you know. But we've all toned down and gotten much better looks these days. So the main thing is people overdo it. The other thing, and this is, I guess, maybe more of a personal taste thing, people make the mistake, I feel, of over lightening the shadows. And that goes, we expect shadows to be dark. You may want some detail in them, but people have a tendency, and the software does it too, of over lightening the shadows. So you wind up with an image that's not very contrasty, and it just looks odd because the shadows are too bright.
So it looks a little dull.
It looks a little dull, and then the shadows just aren't dark enough. They're like a light gray instead of being dark, and it just looks weird. And I think that's a thing that people do, and to me, it isn't a cartoony look, but it's just not realistic looking.
It's funny because I'm the cover photographer for Neapolitan Family Magazine, and we had kind of this model with she's a teenage girl. It's a family magazine, and she's playing guitar, and she had jeans on and kind of a peasant shirt. Kind of had a 70s vibe to her, and so they said, "Can you put like a 70s filter on?" Okay, so I started fooling around with it and looked at a few, and that was the big thing, to make something look old, was to to fade it out, get rid of all the shadows. So it does. It's got a real dull look to it, and then of course I made it kind of yellowy, and but it came out cool. But it definitely looks like an effect. It doesn't look, normal.
Yeah, it's
so I know what you mean.
Yeah, so
I like you need some contrast. I like contrasting pictures,
you need some contrast, and they'll wind up in trying to make it look realistic. They wind up with an image that just doesn't have enough contrast.
Yeah.
The other thing is trying to do an HDR where it's something that the software just isn't going to be able to handle. We talked about ghosting. Well, if there's an awful lot of movement in the picture, and it's rapid movement, I don't care what the software is, it's just not going to be able to deal with it. And it's going to fail. It's going to wind up with
HDR is for still life only.
Basically, yeah. You want limited movement in it, if any movement. And that's something you have to be aware of.
Okay.
So, if it's, or all your shutter speeds have to be high enough that somewhere along the line you have to have an image without blur for it to successfully deghost.
I don't even know how it could work if you had movement in it, because when you blend the three pictures, what would happen? Like, say you had a bird flying across and you got the bird sharp in one picture, but it's gone in the next picture.
Oh, it'll pick one. It'll pick one.
It will pick one?
That's how the deghosting works. It picks the one with the sharpest image and uses that and throws the other ones away.
I see. Okay.
You could play around with it, and if you only got the bird in one, you don't use that one for the ghosting and eliminate the bird.
There you go. Well, thank you. I
You're
think
welcome.
That was really informative. I think we covered a lot.
We did.
And then we'll look up the blogs and we'll put those in. If they're not there, we'll put them there. We being me, okay?
Yeah, I'll be writing up the other thing. Yeah.
Well, the reason I say me is because I know we already have this stuff written
Yeah.
up. We might not have it in a blog, but I know we
I
have
know
it as
it's there.
handouts.
It's a few years
we
ago.
We do handouts
yeah,
for when we do the trips.
Yeah,
So.
a few years ago, but it's there.
So, all right. Well, thank you for being a guest on this
enjoyed
Understand
it.
Photography
Okay.
show on this side.
There we
so
go.
Nice
Yeah.
to have you on this
Okay.
side. You always have so full of information. And hey, audience, I wonder if you would do us a favor. Would you write an honest review of our show on iTunes? It's really helpful for us to come up in the search engines on iTunes if we have good reviews. And always, if you're watching us on Facebook or on YouTube, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. I'm Peggy Farren. Thanks for watching the episode number 87 of the Understand Photography Show. Next week on the Understand Photography Show, we're going to interview fine art photographer Karen Schulman. Now, I have watched Karen's career go from kind of an intermediate photographer to being a pretty successful photo artist. So we're going to talk about her journey in selling her artwork. So I'll see you next week. If you want to watch us live on our Facebook page, Understand Photography, facebook.com/Understand Photography. Will be live at 4 p.m. Eastern Time next Friday. I'm Peggy Farren signing off. Thank you for watching the Understand Photography show. It would help us immensely if you would click like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.